Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and here we are at part 10 of my series, The Murder of Cleopatra. Yes, it is the final show. Um, I'm almost sorry to leave the story, and I hope you are too, because it is a wonderful opportunity for me to share with you the life and death of Cleopatra in the way I believe it should have been looked at. I brought you some commentary of my own on the new Netflix's series, Queen Cleopatra, and not fond of it because it really pushed the same myths that have always been pushed. And I wanted those myths to go away. Um, because as a criminal profiler, I like to stay with evidence and facts. And although I may have theories that cannot be proven specifically in this day and age, because Cleopatra is no longer here and the archaeological sites are gone and all the people that were there are not there, and we're looking at ancient writings, and a lot of those ancient writings weren't terribly accurate. And then we've looked at 2,000 years of repeat of those inaccurate writings. But in spite of all of that, I wrote this book because I felt like if I looked at everything I could look at and used as much logic as I could possibly bring out of myself and try not to go off into some kind of weird direction with just for the drama of it, I thought I could bring a better version of the history of Cleopatra. So I hope that's what you've gotten out of this series so far. And now we come to part 10. And it is what I call the aftermath, because history doesn't stop when we lose a great person in history. It carries on. So the aftermath is just as important. And we are looking at the person who's responsible for that aftermath, which is Octavian. So I'm going to read from my book. Again, you can get the link below to Amazon. And I hope you do read it, because it's a lot more detailed here than I could ever do in the show. But let me read to you from near the end of the book here about the aftermath. And where we left Cleopatra last time was she had been in captivity under guard by Octavian. And when he got what he wanted from her, which was all the knowledge of where the treasury was and where her last alive son was, the one he didn't want to be alive anymore, then he dispatched her, executed her. And that is where we left off. So let me read to you. So the brutalized Cleopatra is strangled and quietly removed to a sealed tomb to spend eternity with her Roman consort. With all-out war averted, with the surrender of Cleopatra's and Antony's forces, and the cleverly concocted story of Cleopatra's iconic suicide released to the public, the country passes quietly into the hands of the Roman conqueror. There is no citizen revolt. Once the Legede treasure is safely in hand, and the last Ptolemy, Caesarion, the alleged son of Julius Caesar, is located down in Berenice and eliminated, Octavian's major problems are solved. He is the undisputed ruler of the Mediterranean world. He had money to pay his troops and make his country wealthy, and he would never have a Ptolemy challenge him again. This was Octavian's great triumph. So his triumph wasn't going to be to drag a pitiful woman through the streets of Rome and mock her and have people shout boo at her. This was not a triumph that this man needed. He wasn't that kind. And people have written him to be some kind of petty fellow. He's not. He's never had his eye on little tokens of his achievements. What he always had his eye on was the prize, the big prize. He knew what it was. He wanted to be emperor, period. And he eliminated those that were in his way. And he achieved exactly what he set out to achieve. So that was his triumph. And how did that work out in the long run for Octavian, also Augustus, also the new Caesar? How did that work out? Well, he ruled for the next 40 years, and that's no small amount of time. 40 years. And he enlarged his empire. He improved his empire. And he had peace for that period of time, which is remarkable. If I had to pick someone to rule Rome, if I had been living there at the time, I wouldn't have picked Cleopatra and Antony. I would have picked Octavian. So why? Because he's capable, extraordinarily capable. And he did a great job. So, yes, he triumphed. And what about Cleopatra? Did she triumph? Well, sadly, in my opinion, she didn't triumph in history because the historians of the time did not do right by her. They were trying to please Octavian. It's like, oh, we'll make her sound pretty bad. We'll make Antony sound bad. We'll make you look good. And in the process, wrote a very dramatic and not very accurate history, in my opinion. And unfortunately, for 2,000 years, it seems that historians liked what they read because it was exotic, because it was romantic. It was much more interesting to them than the truth, which bothers me greatly because I find the truth, or in my opinion, the more likely truth, based on evidence, based on a profiler's look, based on logic, as much as I can bring out of myself, looking at something that's 2,000 years old. And yes, I can't prove it, but I think what I've written in this book and I've expressed to you here is far more interesting than the lurid history that has been just promoted for so many years. I would like to see this, what I've written in here. I don't mind if historians want to argue with my conclusions, but I would like to see these conclusions brought to light because I think it would benefit the history of Cleopatra because she was an amazing queen. Now, let me read what I also wrote at the end of this book. It has been over 2,000 years since Cleopatra, a woman, ruled Egypt, and rarely have women held such lofty positions of power since her day. I wonder just how much the people here in modern Egypt and elsewhere actually knew about Cleopatra VII, the tough and amazing woman who ruled successfully for nearly 20 years under conditions that would have been trying for any ruler, let alone a female, which was quite an amazing feat. Understanding just how brilliant and determined the last pharaoh was should be an inspiration to girls and women everywhere. Since females have been noticeably absent from power positions in the history of mankind, a clear portrayal of a woman of Cleopatra's caliber should be a great addition to our knowledge of world politics and sociology. No longer seen as merely a seductive, overly emotional woman who made poor choices and ended up cowering in her tomb, Cleopatra can now take her rightful place as a political figure with brains and brawn equal to any man of her time or in any century thereafter. And I really strongly believe that. And I know some will come forward and say, oh, this is a whole feminist rendition. No, it's not a feminist rendition at all. I never looked at this through the eye of, I have to prove women are okay. I simply looked at the evidence and said, what kind of woman is Cleopatra? How did she handle her 20 years? How did she become the queen? How did she keep her reign for so long under horrifying conditions? How did she struggle to the end? And I found her to be simply an excellent ruler and a very, very strong figure of history. Very, very unique. And so, yes, as a woman, do I appreciate the fact that she is a woman who achieved this? Yes. But I also appreciate Octavian because he achieved a great deal too. And to tell you the truth, if I had to pick between Cleopatra ruling me or Octavian, I might have to go for Octavian, just because I know what he did once he became the one and only emperor, and he did so much for the Roman Empire. That's just my thought. Now, I could be wrong. If he had lost and Cleopatra and Antony took over, maybe we would have seen them do marvelous things too. It's just that I know that this guy, he was a very methodical, he thought his whole way through everything he did in his lifetime to achieve things, and he succeeded. So I just know he was a pretty good choice to end up as the ruler of the Roman Empire. But we will never know, because Cleopatra lost, and that's the way things go sometimes. So yeah, she might have been as good as Octavian. We'll just never know. But for her 20 years under those circumstances, I think she did a pretty fantastic job. And I hope in the future, my book, my work here, more will come out. I hope more people will see what I've written and discuss this, and really, let's let history be more about the facts and the evidence and less about just a great story. That's not what history is supposed to be. That's what fiction's supposed to be. Let's stay with nonfiction as much as we can possibly do so. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the series. I've enjoyed being here to have another chance to bring what I believe is a truer history of Cleopatra to the public. And so I thank you for that. And if you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. And I won't see you again for any more parts of the Murder of Cleopatra. But who knows? I may be back to talk about Cleopatra someday in the future. And thank you again for being here. Bye.